Streaming? Okay. Tell me when.
You're good to go.
Good evening, everyone. And as usual, we begin with the prayer. Heavenly King, comfort the spirit of truth, God everywhere present and fill with all things. Treasure your blessings and giver of life. Come and abide in us and cleanse us from every impurity and save our souls of good one. Okay, so in the what's that? So it's a bit of a delay.
And then it's just a YouTube playback. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. Right. I can see Father Alex there on Zoom, or at least his name, and Mac is there too. All right. Others on YouTube. So last time we did the second part of the Beatitudes, and now we're doing a section in Matthew chapter 5. So quite a few verses, but I'll split it up into bite-sized pieces according to the subheadings. All right, so the first subheadings, the subheading is this disciples in the world. So that's, oh, look, what I should do is, I don't know how realistic that is, to give you some other references of other scriptural readings we're going to cover. So besides bits and pieces in Matthew chapter 5, look, I think we'll give it a miss this time. I'll just have to announce it as we come up to it, because I'll be spending time and you'll be waiting for me now, so it's best not to do it. I just remember that I said last time I was going to do it. I didn't. All right. So the first section, disciples in the world. So that's in chapter 5, Matthew, verses 13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on the hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And that's the first little section for tonight. And so the Lord is firstly talking about salt. You are the salt of the earth. Now, what does that mean? Salt is the oldest known food preservative. And so the presence of the people of God, the church in the world, acts to preserve the world from yielding to corruption and moral decay. That's what it means. You are the light of the world. Light enables people to see where they're going. So the light of the world obviously refers to moral guidance of the church in the world, a compass to give direction in spiritual life. Now, the last bit in that section was, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So what the Lord means is that the apostles will not only be preaching to the world, not only, talk the talk, but walk the walk, as the Americans would say. Yes, they would be teaching with their life and death. based on the Beatitude, their life based on the Beatitudes that we just covered in the last couple of sessions. Yes, so okay, let's have a look at the next section. Same chapter, just continue on verses 17 to 20. So that's the law fulfilled. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Right. Now, there's a couple of, this is an important section because here before the Lord begins to talk in more concrete terms about, giving examples from the law, he states an overall principle that he has come not to destroy, but to fulfill the law. So what does it mean to fulfill the law? Well, according to patristic exegesis, now exegesis, I'll remind you, means commentary or explanation. To fulfill in this context means, first of all, to keep the law. So he doesn't break the law; he keeps the law, and you'll see that from his birth, Christ keeps the law of Moses. So that's the first aspect. The second, to fulfill, the fathers say, means to top up, so the law was at a certain level and Christ comes and fills it to the top. Now, you see, I'd like to read you something from this complete Jewish study Bible. Okay, for Jews and Christians. Okay, it's an interesting publication. This has got some insights that come from the vast culture of the Jews. So first of all, I'd like to say that well, I'll just read the section here. It says, these verses provide crucial insight into Yeshua's Jesus, right? Understanding of Torah and its meaning. Here he's not canceling the Torah. Instead, he is stating that he came to interpret it correctly. Romans 10:14 is misinterpreted by many. Now, Romans 10:14, I'll just remind you what it says. It says, Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Christ is the end of the law. And so they're saying here that this particular statement in Romans chapter 10, verse 4, is incorrect because the word telos in Greek, okay? Yes, it is, they say it is used 42 times in the New Testament, but only 5 times it is translated to finish, to cease, or to terminate, okay? so telos is noun, so finish, cessation, termination. In all other cases, including Romans 10, chapter 10, verse 4, telos is understood as outcome, result, or consummation. Moreover, the statement that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, did not come to abolish the Torah is a first century rabbinic idiom. To abolish the Torah meant to misinterpret it, not to cancel it. I have not come to abolish the law, so to misinterpret it, we're saying. So, you know, in the idiom of the first century rabbinical usage. Second, Yeshua's expression to complete Torah meant that he came to teach it correctly. All right. So, you know, the correct Christian understanding of all of this is that Christ has come to complete the economy of our salvation, which begins, you know, in the beginning of the Bible, in the Old Testament. And he builds on the foundation that has already been established. So it's he completes the building. So this is the fulfillment, you know, but the foundation has been laid. He is, as we'll see right now, does make corrections and it begins to interpret the Torah, the law properly, not like the way that the scribes and the Pharisees were doing in his time. But before we get into that, let's just also remember a couple of other things to broaden our understanding of what this means, what this all means. So he doesn't abolish the law, but yet in the New Testament, what doesn't apply to us? So are there things that are all the 613 commandments of the law, do they still apply to us? Or only some of these commandments apply to us? Well, to get a proper picture on that, you need to look into the book of Acts. And there are two stories there. The first story is that concerns the vision of Peter in Acts 10. Just read to you. So Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open and an object like a great sheet bound at the four corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean." You see, because there were certain restrictions in the law of Moses about what you could eat. Well, you know, everybody's familiar with kosher sort of prohibitions about pork, but did you know also about that, you know, shellfish were not allowed, and fish without scales. So, slimy eels and things were not allowed. Smoked eels, a delicacy for some. Okay, not allowed according to the law. Prawns, yes, lobsters, all sorts of crayfish and things like octopi, all the seafood stuff. None of it, just scaly fish. That's all. That's the only thing that is allowed out of all seafood in the law. Not all grazing animals, only ones with the dual divided hoof. So a horse has an undivided hoof, not allowed. Okay, so all of Central Asia was breaking the law of Moses.
I'm not having a problem with that.
Not so. You don't like lobsters?
The squirrely things, the slimy things, and horses,
Okay, pork. All right. And
why?
Yeah. Look, Chris, if we have time, I'll try to answer why after we finish. But there's quite a big program tonight, so yeah. The why really refers more to the Old Testament practice. I'm just trying to explain why all of this doesn't. The sort of the diet part and the ritual part. Okay, so then there's another section. I'm not going to read all of it. Actually, I won't read any of it, but I'll just tell you that chapter 15 of the book of Acts is very important because it talks about the first apostolic, the apostolic council in Jerusalem, first ever council of the church, chaired by the Bishop of Jerusalem, brother of the Lord James, St. James. Okay. And there, the apostles had to tackle a very serious problem that arose. And, of course, it would have arisen because it was a watershed in the life of the church. The church had moved out of the confines of Palestine, Israel, and moved into non-Jewish lands, north of Israel, into Syria. And there was a large Christian community founded by Saul and Barnabas, and they attracted lots of people from the Gentiles who came into the synagogue, and they were acquainted with the culture of the Bible. And so they baptized these people. But it then became a problem because they understood that they could not expect these people to keep to the complexity of the Mosaic law of Moses. And this was a sore point for visitors from Jerusalem, from the home base, because these Christians, Jewish Christians who came up to Antioch and saw what was happening, they got scandalized. So it was a big problem. What was the church going to do about it? So the apostles had to get together and discuss this, and they decided that they couldn't ask the new converts from a Gentile background to keep to the complexity of the law of Moses in terms of diet and ritual, except for extreme forms of that would scandalize their Jewish brothers. So they said, don't eat anything, roadkills or animals that were strangled, or animals that were sacrificed in pagan temples, okay, because that would be scandalous. And also, they stipulated that Christians should keep, certain purity and in very general terms, and keep like the ethical principle of not doing unto others as they wouldn't have them do unto them. And that was it. Very simple. And I'm not going to read it to you, but check it. It's an interesting, fascinating. I mean, the Book of Acts is a fascinating reading, because it really immerses us in the life of the early church, the earliest church, the apostolic, charismatic church. Yes, so from those two points, those two places in the Book of Acts, you can see how the subsequent culture of the church developed. Because look, the Jewish component of the church was quickly outstripped by the Gentile, and statistically. By the end of the first century, the Jewish component was a tiny minority. Most of the church were Gentiles. Okay, so it meant that they didn't follow the law about circumcision and all the rest of it, all the ritual law, but they did keep the moral law. And so the Ten Commandments is actually, if you look at the most important aspect of Mosaic law, they're all about spiritual and moral, ethical norms, not about ritual or dietary stuff. The rest of, the 603 commandments. Right. So, yes, just another point. Christians are often, what I mean is mainstream Christians, including the Orthodox, are accused of abandoning the Lord's Day, the Sabbath, the seventh day, the day of rest. The day that was dedicated to God in the Old Testament. So did the Christian church abolish the Sabbath? No, it didn't. It did not. And if you look at the liturgical practices of the Orthodox Church, you will see that we do respect the Sabbath. But there's something important, more important than the Sabbath, because just as St. John Chrysostom says that the New Testament stands above the Old Testament, like heaven above the earth. You see, so in that sense, the first day of the week, the day of the resurrection, stands miles above the Sabbath, but we have not abolished the Sabbath. No, we still respect the Sabbath, and it's reflected in the liturgical practices and fasting practices. So, the Sabbath is, for instance, you look at the fasting rules. So, for instance, during Great Lent, one rule applies to Monday to Friday, strict fast, and then on Sabbath, it's relaxed. Okay, and oil and wine is allowed on the Sabbath and then on the Sunday as well. right? And the same for all the fasts. The Saturdays are viewed as a non-fast day. You know? And there are certain aspects of the services that elevate the prestige of the Sabbath above Monday to Friday. Right. So that's okay. Now we read the next section on the spiritual understanding of the law. So that's in the same chapter 5, verses. Oh, wait a minute, same. Spiritual understanding. Just give you the right reference. Yes, well, that section goes from 21 to 48, but it's broken up into several sections. Christ offers a commentary on the moral law of the Old Testament because that needed more explanation, is more difficult than the technical rules of the ritual law. That's why Christ needed to, and it was subject to much more corruption in the interpretation of the scribes. So the first of these sections is verses 21 to 26. 21 to 20, yeah. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge and the judge hand you over to the officer and you will be thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. Sounds pretty severe. All right. Now, what does it all mean? So, whoever, first of all, you know that one of the 10 commandments says, thou shalt not kill, or more precisely, thou shalt not murder. You know, because kill is too general, but murder is, you know, intentional killing of a human being. But the scribes added another verse, which is not in Exodus chapter 20, verse 13, where the commandment is given, but they added, whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. It's a rabbinical addition as a commentary. But Christ quotes this addition, this commentary, and by quoting it, he shows that the rabbis had sort of brought this commandment, which is a commandment that is supposed to cover all levels of human life: spiritual, emotional, and physical. Right? They brought it down just to the superficial physical level of murder, and they interpreted it only on the level of same as civil law, secular law, that punishes only acts right? But civil law does not worry about what people say or what people think. Okay, I mean, well, at least what people think. It doesn't cover. You can say things that can get you into trouble in civil law too. But certainly saying something cannot be interpreted as killing someone, right? Now, the word raka means empty head. Okay, and Christ says that for saying that, you're liable not just to the local, to the magistrates' court, but to the Supreme Court, Sanhedrin, to the council. If you say fool, then you are liable, to the bad place, because fool meant an atheist or a godless person, as we hear in Psalm 13, verse 1. The fool said in his heart, there is no God. Okay. So the idea here is that God judges not only sinful acts, but words and thoughts. Okay, and so this is why the Lord talks here about if you want to bring a gift to the altar and remember you have something against your brother, go first and reconcile yourself to your brother, and then bring you a gift, because you can't come to God when you've got a problem with your brother. Okay, and this is why in the Orthodox Church, a priest, will ask a person if they have any major problems with anyone, like a falling out, a serious falling out where there's animosity. You can't come up to the altar. You can't receive communion in that state, because it's a state of anger and animosity, and no love, no forgiveness. Problem. Christ talks about it. And yes, the other bit here is agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him. Now, the Holy Fathers interpret the adversary to mean your conscience. While you're on the way is while you're in this life. Listen to your conscience and make sure that you live in harmony with your conscience, because your conscience is like your adversary. It tells you where you are not obeying the law of God. So you have to agree with your adversary, with your conscience. Okay. So now, sometimes, of course, people say, well, I've tried to make peace with my brother and it doesn't work. Whoever this person may be, they don't want to hear my apologies, my asking of forgiveness only makes them more angry. And that certainly can happen, because the other person may not yet be ready for that reconciliation. But at least you need to make sure that you don't have anything against that person in your heart when you come to God, right? Or at least you have the willingness, you want to, you're struggling. Gee, it's hard, that person's really hurt me, but I understand that Christ said, I have to forgive them. I've tried, it's not going to work, because it's just, things are just too hot at the moment. But I do want to forgive them, and I'm struggling with myself, and, we're struggling with each other. But where there's a will, there's a way. And the Holy Fathers teach that if we have a falling out with a person, or if someone has hurt us, offended us, we have to pray for that person, okay? Because there is nothing more dear to God than when we pray for our enemies or for, the offenders, people who have hurt us. That is really pleasing to God, okay? Because we're making an effort to humble ourselves, we're on the right track. That's what it means. Right, the next bit. The next bit is about adultery. So that's the same chapter 5, verses 27 to 30. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. All right, so just like with murder, the scribes here were concerned only with the actual act of adultery, okay? But Christ judges impure thoughts and passions. And the Lord adds that one must resist temptation with the utmost commitment and seriousness. And he uses very strong imagery, plucking out the eye and chopping off a hand to make his point, how serious you should be in fighting temptation. And you know what? There are plenty of lives of saints where the saints have done things literally, like getting an axe and chopping a finger off or something like that when they were tempted, or literally plucking an eye out. Don't remember, I've got to look it up. One of the female saints, she wanted to dedicate herself to spiritual life, and she was pursued by this passionate young lover. And she asked him, what is it in me that really attracts you? And she said, your eyes. So she just plucked her eyes. Pretty glorious. Yeah, not for us. Okay. It's sometimes some of the things we read in the lives of saints, like that Egyptian struggler who got angry at a mosquito, got irritated after a mosquito bit him. He slapped the mosquito and killed him. And because he caught himself showing irritability and anger, he punished himself by sitting in the swamp until he was unrecognizable from the mosquito bites. All right. Well, this is for the Olympics, the Olympic champions, not for us. All right. Okay, divorce, verses 31 to 32, just continuing the chapter 5. Furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. Okay. Now, this letter of divorce is mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 3. In actual fact, the whole idea of this letter of divorce was to make divorce difficult because, the person had to really document their case, why they needed to have this divorce, to provide written reasons. Now, this whole thing was debased by the time of Christ, and the letter of divorce was seen as a sort of a ticket to easy life. I don't like this partner. Boom, here's a letter of divorce. See you later, alligator. Okay, so that's the superficial sort of attitude that was shown. That's why Christ speaks out against it. The next one is about making oaths. That's 33 to 37. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one. Let's have a look at what all this means. So, the purpose of an oath is to bring God as our witness, because God is the only one who knows me inside out. He knows each one of us like nobody else knows, like no human being can know us. And so, to swear, it's retained in secular law, this principle, I bring God as my witness. When you make an affidavit, a sworn statement, this is what you're doing. And if there is no other person that that is an actual witness, then God is your witness to what you're saying under oath. In secular laws, okay, unless somebody else makes another sworn statement that says, I say something contrary to that. Okay, and then the magistrate or the court The judge needs to sort out, who's lying, where the truth is. But yes, Christ teaches that if you live according to your conscience, you don't need to swear constantly and say, oh, I swear by God that this, I'm saying the truth. Because if you always say the truth, if you are respected by people for your truthfulness, for your integrity, all you need to say is, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't, and people will believe you. This is the whole import of what Christ is saying. By the way, he's not saying that you're not allowed to make oaths, because he himself agreed to a statement under oath. Remember what I'm talking about? When the high priest addressed him in a particular legalistic way, and he called on the name of God to tell everyone, was he the Son of the Highest? And Christ answered, you said it. Yes, he agreed. Under oath, as it were. So Christ doesn't forbid making oaths if it's done properly, in the proper context. Also, we have, for instance, you can jot this down, Romans chapter 9, verse 1, and also in Romans 10, chapter 10, 1 and 2, where Paul makes oaths. See, the Jews at the time of Christ thought that this is the whole thing about, don't make an oath by saying, by heaven or the earth or, your head, and all of this stuff. They thought that if it's a bit like the principle of euphemisms, you instead of saying a swear word, you substitute it by something else. This is the principle. They thought they actually do not refer to God specifically, then they're not using the Lord's name in vain. So they're not sinning. But Christ explains that in a lot of cases, they imply a God. Right. So then it becomes self-deception for the person who makes these oaths or swears this way, and also usually uses the oath to deceive somebody else in lying. Right. About vengeance. Vengeance. So that's verses 38 to 42. Just continue on. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. So the law against vengeance is given in several places of the Torah. In Exodus, chapter 21, verses 23, 24. In Leviticus, chapter 24, verses 19, 20. And in Deuteronomy, chapter 19, verse 21. I'm not going to read them, just referring to them. And this law was designed to prevent the escalation of animosity and hatred and vengeance. It says an eye for an eye, literal, a tooth for a tooth, not, yeah, you knocked out a tooth of mine, I'll knock all your teeth out. No, just a tooth for a tooth. Okay, so balance. In a lot of cultures, including the Old Testament law, it's about balance. It's about balance. I'll tell you a funny story about an incident that was told to me, a story by a nun in Jerusalem has now passed away, and she was actually Mother Moses. Says, yeah, she passed away several years ago. When I knew her, she was a nun in Gethsemane, but then afterwards she became the abbess of Mount of Olives. So she says there was an incident in Jerusalem where an Armenian priest was going past the Jewish quarter on his way to, Armenians had been present in the old city for a long time. So he was going past the Jewish quarter, and one of these really zealous Orthodox Jews spat at him because he was wearing a cross. So the priest took off his cross, came up and smacked him in the face. Okay. So the guy took him to court. The Jewish magistrate looked at the case and says, okay, he spat at you, you hit him. To me, it sounds like a fair balance. Case dismissed. Very wise man. Okay. So, the law, is about balance. Right. So, yes. Secondly, this law was geared to prevent crimes because of the fear of punishment. However, a corrupt person, a morally corrupt person, could still find justification in lawfully punishing the offender when really there was no need for it. Okay. And this little story that I've just told you shows that the law, when exercised properly, is real justice. And stops people from being from using the law viciously. So here Christ again does away with the secular level of understanding of this law. Instead, he offers an the ethical law of love and forgiveness, which he wants to be the governing principle of his followers, the Christians. So a Christian really should refuse to seek satisfaction for suffering an offense from his neighbor. Not to have this sense of, I'll teach you, I'll pay you back. Right? Legally. No, not allowed. So do not resist evil, or do not resist the evil person. It means that do not seek vengeance through the law, through litigation. Or, on a mundane level as well, of course, mostly happens on mundane level. Look, I think that we'll probably have to stop there. Oh no, we can finish. Just got the last bit left. So the last bit is love of your neighbor. So yes, that's 43 to 48. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Wow. This is the real lessons, the depth of Christian moral law. So the love your neighbor is this commandment is contained in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. But the words "and hate your enemy" again were an addition by the scribes. Christ mentions them. This addition shows that they understood that who the neighbor was, according to the principle of us and them. Jews and the Gentiles. Okay? Now, Christ does not reject their understanding. He doesn't even comment about that aspect of it, which really existed in the Old Testament to protect the Israelites from the surrounding pagans. Because if they got too close to the pagan culture, they were in danger. We see it all the time. They were tempted, because the pagans led a riotously, fun life. But the Israelites were constantly in danger of being corrupted by them. And, actually, when you get to know what sort of moral degradation was practiced in even the religious cults of the pagans, it's quite horrific. Including sacrifice of babies and prostitution of underage children in the temples. That's all described in the Bible. The Bible makes pretty hard reading sometimes. But instead of talking about enemies on that level of understanding, which was valid historically when applied to the existence of Israel in the surrounding environment of paganism from all sides. They only had the sea and the west, which did not tempt them, but everywhere else, all the surrounding cultures. So he turns his attention to personal enemies, and Christ teaches that we should hate sin but love the sinner. Now, I've put it the way that the Holy Father, this is a maxim of the Holy Fathers, but it's really our gospel maxim. Hate sin, but love the sinner. It is just so useful to remember this and to practice it, because the problem is that people associate the behavior of a person with their personhood. Okay, now we have to understand, if we actually struggle with our own sinfulness, then we will know how difficult it is to free ourselves from this tenacious old man, the corrupt humanity, formed by the distortions of the passions. It clings to us, right? So we will be much more compassionate to other people and to their faults. And we will even eventually learn with the saints that it is beneficial for us when we are attacked by people. Difficult to accept, perhaps, our natural reaction is, defensive aggressive. Oh yeah, I'll show you. Instead, Christ is teaching, for 3.5 years, and then his final teaching is on the cross. The open arms of Christ. This is what our attitude to our neighbor should be. Give credit. Give credit means trust the other person. Credo in Latin, I believe, I trust. Credit comes from that. Like even financial credit. Yeah, that's where it began. On the level of ethical level in banking. Medieval banking. That's where it comes from. Now, just to finish off for tonight, I'd like to share with you that one of the most moving things that I came across as a young person, as a university student, even before I thought of seminary or anything like that, was a book by Saint Silouan, of the Holy Mountain, the Elder, where he talks about, many things, but he says basically that if you're a real committed Christian, you have to love your enemies. If you don't love your enemies, you're not a Christian yet. That's food for thought, isn't it? So I think on that note, since we've been going for more than an hour, and I've been trying since we began a couple of years ago on this YouTube programs, just to keep it to an hour's length. No questions? Oh, well, easy. Look, it is an important section that we just covered, isn't it? And it's there's a lot for us to learn and to, not just with our intellect, but to take on board. No, that's much harder. Okay. So it's got to be done. All right. It is truly meet to bless thee, Theotokos, ever blessed and most pure, and the mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, beyond compare more glorious than the seraphim. Without corruption, thou gavest birth to God the Word. True Theotokos, thee do we magnify. Good evening, everyone, and God willing, see you in a fortnight's time. Chris, no problems with fortnight? So keep that in mind. Okay. Now I've got a couple of people here with me, so I'm very grateful for those. And as a matter of fact, I'll just remind you, I know that it's much easier to be at home, especially on a night on a night like tonight. It's cold and freezing outside, raining and freezing. Yeah, yes, but if you'd like to come and just grab a chair and sit with me, it makes it easier. It really helps me to see some live people around me. Oh, goodbye. That's great.